Hello everybody, how you guys all doing? Welcome to my summer 2017 movies rewind. This summer was definitely big for movies. You had a lot of smaller films that did very well, as well as the big blockbuster films that definitely just went out there and audiences just supported them completely. And of course, we also had a lot of big surprises that I want to go over. The way I'm going to lay this video out is basically go over most of the summer releases, and the summer that I'm counting is from May through July. And so I'm going to go through those summer releases. The order in which I'm going to go through for the summer releases is that I'm going to go from least earnings at the box office to most earnings at the box office. So that's the order that I'm going to go through, just so you know where these films stood in terms of audience appreciation. And interestingly enough, I went on social media and asked some of my friends and other family members and a lot of other people that are in my social media community to take a survey on their favorite summer movie. And I have the results. So I'm really excited to start off this video with you guys. So let's get right into it. So the first movie I'll be talking about is, that's right, David Lowery's A Ghost Story, starring Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck. Let's go over what this movie was about a little bit. This was a indie film that was produced by A24, and A24 was kind of betting their hopes on this film probably after they delivered another indie flop film that we'll get into a little bit later. The movie starred Casey Affleck, who is right off of his success with Manchester by the Sea, which was a big Oscar film last year. Rooney Mara is also in this film, who is being called the next indie darling. Personally, one of my very favorite actresses. I haven't seen this film particularly though yet, but her work's been very much praised in this film. Again, it was produced by A24, which is becoming a big indie powerhouse, especially after the film Moonlight, which is a film they produced and won the Best Picture at the Oscars. At the box office, according to boxofficemojo.com, which is where I'll be getting most of my statistics, the film is doing okay at the box office. Definitely for an indie film, it's doing pretty well. It's just slightly over $1 million, but it definitely has the rest of its running in theaters to go. The film was definitely very, very well received by critics, especially at the Cannes Film Festival, where this film initially premiered and where I personally heard of this film for the first time. So it was definitely a charge for the indie box office range. You know, we don't get that many indie films in the summer, but this indie film definitely was very well received, and audiences seem to like it for the most part, and it shows that specialty audiences still exist. It was definitely a very different film for a lot of audiences, and they weren't able, not everyone was able to grasp its intentions, but in general, A Ghost Story was a very well received indie film in the summer. And our next film is The Wall. Came to us from the director of films like Edge of Tomorrow and Born Identity, and was a quite small movie that kind of made a few waves at the box office at the time at which another big Marvel film was playing, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. The film starred Aaron Taylor Johnson and John Cena. Aaron Taylor Johnson was kind of a forgotten star up to this point, and this film was actually quite well received by critics. It garnered a 68% on Rotten Tomatoes as of now, as of standing, and the film actually managed to break from its budget, which was only $3 million, and the film currently stands at $3.5 million or so. And you can definitely expect this film to do well at rentals like Redbox or on streaming even. But it was a little quiet film that ended up getting some pretty good critical reception and making some good bucks for the production company that this was from, Amazon Studios. Our next movie is The Beguiled. Is one of those indie flicks that definitely took a large spot in the summer and became quite the story. The film had an all-star cast including Nicole Kidman and Elle Fanning, and was directed by none other than Sofia Coppola. This was kind of a story going through the summer that this was one of the other big feminist movies that came out, other than the big, of course, Wonder Woman. Also, this film managed to do very well at the box office. Some reports have it almost pegged at 14.5 million US dollars, and the film was only made for a mere $10 million, and it managed to do absolutely great job at the box office, bringing in that, again, indie specialty audience into the theaters to watch the film. It was produced by Focus Features, which is they needed this victory and they got it. And The Beguiled was one of the biggest box office indie darlings for the summer. Our next movie is Wish Upon was one of the two horror films that came out in this summer, in a summer that was basically devoid of any serious big horror flicks. Wish Upon came. Oh God. This film starred Joey King and was made by Broad Green and Orion Pictures, and came to us from the director of the absolutely horrendous film Annabelle. It was only 90 minutes, and it was really directed towards teenage audiences who supported the film enough for it to cross its budget, just enough for them to make a profit, which is probably what the small production companies were meaning to do anyway. The film came in with terrible reviews with a standing 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. Again, only one of the two horror films that came out this summer seriously had a lack of horror films. Next film is It Comes at Night, was A24's horror flick that was absolutely a disappointment at the box office. The film came in with a bunch of hype from both critics and audiences. While critics loved the film, audiences completely panned it, most likely due to some very misleading marketing. And it definitely brought up the question of how to market indie horror films, since the film was marketed as a creature feature, but people found out that it was actually more of an art house type of film. Nevertheless, the movie was made for very little, so it actually ended up bringing up a lot of its budget back. So it's currently standing at around $17.5 million for box office, even though the film was made for a maximum of around $5 million. And it also brought down the careers of many of its included ensemble cast. So this was definitely a flop in some ways, even though it was able to bring back some of its money, it was a huge disappointment for A24, which is why the reward or the victory that they got from A Ghost Story was definitely very rewarding for them. Our next movie is The Big Sick, was the very immensely successful adaptation of the true life story of interracial couple Kumail and Johnny, a big comedic star, and Emily V. Gordon. The film was released and it came all the way from a lot of Cannes Film Festival hype, and it managed to do absolutely incredibly at the box office, probably most likely in my opinion due to very well distribution markets. The film was absolutely excellently received by critics and audiences alike and was hailed as one of the best rom-coms of the decade, and it's currently pegged at around $33 million in terms of budget. Definitely a big surprise for everyone, and the film managed to do very well in a summer that was more about big action blockbusters and superhero films than small rom-coms such as this. But this film managed to do absolutely well in a crowded summer, so hats off. Next movie is Oh, ouch! Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets was directed by French director Luc Besson, and it is one of the biggest budgeted European films of all time, coming in, I think it was budgeted around almost now $210 million. A lot of countries were involved in this film, and a lot of investors from different companies were involved in this film, and they lost big bucks because the film was hoping to do well here in the United States, but it only managed to crack, at this point, $33 million of its $210 million budget. The film hasn't released in China yet, and that's definitely a big market, but even China's market is getting very crowded at this point, and the film has really no hope or future left. One of the biggest flops probably in recorded history, the film's being compared to another flop that came out a couple years ago called John Carter, with similar sci-fi themes, and also flopped, despite a lot of people thinking it to be a big box office success, thinking it would do great. It didn't, neither did Valerian, and it was definitely struck a blow to the careers of Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne, who are very budding actors. So Valerian was a complete flop, especially for production company Europa, which was really pegging a lot of money on this film. Complete flop. So for purposes of time, I won't be going over some of these next films in depth, but I got my phone over here, and I'm going to tell you some of other film highlights that came out in the summer. We also got 47 Meters Down, which was a shark thriller that managed to be a pretty good success despite having to be thrown in theaters at the last moment from its producers. Emoji Movie. Oh boy, this film did a lot better than it should have, even though the very, very negative critical response that it got. I think children enjoyed it quite a bit, so a lot of children and families did go to see the Emoji Movie. They watched Dwayne Johnson's flop, proving that Dwayne Johnson's formula for adult R-rated type films may not be working. We also had Captain Underpants, the first epic movie, the last collaboration between DreamWorks and Fox. That film was a mild success, but DreamWorks will be moving on anyway, so they don't need that money from that movie that much. And also, they delivered The Boss Baby, which is a big hit. We also got Alien Covenant, kind of a flop film. The film was expecting to do much better, but wasn't really able to do that all that well. The Mummy, Tom Cruise's big flop film, did not do as well as they expected and was a complete blow to the dark universe that Universal was trying to set up. Girls Trip ended up doing pretty well at the box office, coming in at number 11 in the summer box office. Number 10, Baby Driver. I wish I could have gone more in depth about this film, but this film did absolutely excellently. Edgar Wright created an excellent film, in my opinion, also. Did very well, managed to make around $129 million plus. Excellent film, and it was a great success for TriStar, the production company. Transformers: The Last Knight was perhaps one of the lowest earning Transformers films to date. Kind of sad, considering the fact that the Transformers films and franchise has performed pretty excellently in the past. But summers are getting hard to achieve nowadays, and Michael Bay wasn't able to crack it this time. The next Transformers movie that you'll be seeing is the Bumblebee standalone film. Sounds bad, but hear me out. The film stars Haley Steinfeld and John Cena and is directed by Travis Knight, the director of Kubo and the Two Strings. At number 8 in the box office for the summer, we had War for the Planet of the Apes. Even though the film did okay and was a Fox distribution, it could have done better had the summer not been quite this crowded. But it was a crowded summer, and the film was not able to create too many splashes at the box office. At number 7, we had Dunkirk. Yes, Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk, which did pretty well and is still earning. And it's already at number 7. I think you can see that number rise in the future at some point. The film did very well, and it definitely did a lot better than Interstellar. But as is often with Christopher Nolan films, the film began to drop a couple weekends in. Number 6, we have Cars 3, the trilogy no one asked for. The film actually got some pretty mildly good critical responses and managed to break even, I think. So that film was a mild success as well. At number 5, we had Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. This film did very well at the box office despite all the negative responses from critics. Disney still has it, and so does Johnny Depp. The inclusion of Javier Bardem was in this film also. The film did very well internationally also. So domestically also very well, and internationally very well. Also, next time you'll be seeing Javier Bardem is probably Darren Aronofsky's mother, co-starring Jennifer Lawrence. Number 4, we have Despicable Me 3, another trilogy no one really asked for. The film proves that the franchise name remains strong despite lukewarm criticism or lukewarm reception from critics. The film managed to do quite well. So that brings us to our top 3. And again, guys, I'd like to apologize for not being able to go over more movies in depth with you guys. I hope this rundown kind of just gave you a little bit of a gist. So I want to get straight to the top 3, so let's get into it. At number 3 for summer 2017 was Spider-Man Homecoming, actually, and it was at number 3 so far for the summer box office for 2017. Made around over $294 million, and some of the money goes to Sony, which still technically has some of the rights over Spider-Man, but this was first Spider-Man that Marvel had a lot of creative control over. The film actually did not do that well in the whole spectrum of events, since this was, I believe, the lowest earning Spider-Man film to date, probably because of Spider-Man and superhero exhaustion from the audience in general, but Tom Holland gave an excellent performance, and the film was very well received by critics. At number 2, we had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and at number 1, we had the official poll winner, not counting the spam voter who voted for Girls Trip 15 times. Number 1, and also the number 1 winner for my poll was Wonder Woman. These movies, both Guardians and Wonder Woman, went head on, and they earned around the same. even though one was from Marvel and one was from DC. So two big movies, and the number one winner was Wonder Woman.